I want to thank Jana for her persistence and for her inviting me here today. I'll tell you all a little story about how I got here. And Chris has told me that I should go maybe 30, 35 minutes, and if there's time for Q&A, I'll do that. And I don't have any idea how long this will go, so Chris is going to get the hook if I go over my allotted time. As Landon was saying, I've had a number of jobs. I've been chided about that by friends and family over my life, but I've loved them all. And I used to be on sort of the public speaking tour, clubs, service clubs, organizations like this need a speaker. So maybe when I was with the president of the Redbirds for those 7 years, maybe I spoke 500 times, something like that. But quite honestly, after I retired from the Redbirds in 2001, I just went undercover. My wife and I had our consulting firm. I was opening a few doors at Waddell & Associates. And no more public speaking invitations. And then about 6 months ago, a young man named Austin Baker asked me if I would speak to his group of rising juniors and seniors at the University of Memphis in a program called the MILE program. It's an acronym for Memphis Institute of Leadership Education. It's part of the business school at the University of Memphis. I said, Austin, I don't know. Anyway, he was pretty persuasive, and he asked me to come and just tell my story about learning about leadership since I'd had some high-profile roles in the community. So I did that, and I kind of wove how I learned leadership, not that I was born with it or not that I even have it, but to the extent that I have had some leadership roles in the community. I wove the story around my different jobs and different just enjoyable things that I've done in my life. And it turned out to be quite fun. I enjoyed it. I think it was well received by the group. And there's a line of well-wishers at the end of the presentation, and one of them is this young lady right here, Jana Cardona, whom I had never met. And she says, I'm with the Sales and Marketing Society. Would you consider speaking to our group? And I said, sure. I'm not sure I have a topic, but if you think that I would have something to add, I'll be happy to. So Jana called me back maybe a month later. This is the way I remember it. It's close to this story anyway. Jana calls me back and says, we have a date. Would you speak? And I said, with all respect, I've been thinking about this, but I just felt guilty that was almost braggadocious, me telling those young people at the University of Memphis, it was Memphis State, Landon, when I went out there a long time ago, about, things I had learned in leadership. And I said, I really don't have a topic. And she said, well, I respect that, but I think our group would like to hear from you. And I said, well, let me think about it. Well, as my daughter here, Allison, will tell you, I'm not good at saying no. I was highly complimented that Jana asked me to come, so I agreed. But I wanted to speak on a topic about which I had some knowledge. And so I said, what would you think about just a topic, because I had been giving it some thought, of sports, past, present, and future in Memphis and the impact on our community. See Malvin Gibson back there from the Sports Development Authority. I'm sure you have another name by now, Malvin, but Malvin knows all about sports development in Memphis. And Jana said yes. My Leadership Memphis classmate, Deb Nichols, was kind to follow up and say hi, and then I've had some conversations with Chris. So I decided that sports is not only an interesting topic to talk about, but I think it's worthy of your consideration about the importance of sports to a community. I'm sure Aaron agrees with that. I just met Aaron back there, the director of this tournament, and we wish her well on what's going on with the new tournament. But I wanted to know for sure if it was really a topic, and it wouldn't just be me musing about my passion for sports. My mantra in life has pretty much always been faith, family, and friends. But if I thought about my life, if there's been one constant in it, it's been always about sports, and particularly baseball. My dear and now departed college coach, Al Brown's daughter, Beth, is here, and she knows how much that I love her dad. But I love sports, but I do think they're important, and I'll tell you why in just 1 second. I was going to share one story. May I ask, is anyone in the audience that happened to be in Calvary Church yesterday for the Lenten preaching series? The preacher, Gary Jones, was back in town. He stole one of my stories, so I'm going to share it since none of y'all heard it yesterday. Irish gentleman goes into a pub in downtown Manhattan. It's an Irish pub, of course, and he sits on the corner of the bar on this Friday afternoon, and he says, I'll take 3 Guinnesses. And the bartender, O'Malley, goes and gets him a Guinness and puts it up there. And he said, no, I said 3. And he said, I'm going to get them for you. I'm just going one at a time. So they're cold. He said, no, all 3. So he got all 3, knocked them down, left. Next Friday, same thing. Next Friday, the bartender's curiosity is killing him. So he says, you got to tell me why 3 at the same time. And he said, well, I have 2 brothers, and they live a long way away. One's in Dublin, one's in London, and we've just decided that every Friday, to keep our love strong for each other, that we'd each go to a pub and we'd have 3 Guinnesses. So I do that every Friday. And so he says, well, I sure respect that. I hope that's a tradition that lasts for a long time. So this goes on for a year. And all of a sudden, on St. Patrick's Day, it happens to roll around on a Friday. And he's in there, and he goes up to O'Malley, and he says, I'll take 2 Guinnesses. And O'Malley's stunned and saddened by that. And so he goes around, and it's a big crowd in an Irish pub there on St. Patrick's Day, and he goes by, and all the regulars have come to know this gentleman. And so they're all sad, and so O'Malley comes back, and he says, I just want to express our deepest sympathies for your loss. And he said, oh, no. There's been no loss. My brothers are fine. I've just given up drinking for Lent. So I thought that was good. And Gary Jones literally told that from the pulpit at Calvary yesterday. Let me tell you why I think sports is a worthy topic for your consideration, and the importance of sports to a city's culture and to a city's feeling about itself. Within the past year, I have heard magnificent presentations at different venues from Henry Turley about downtown development, and there's never been a more conscientious and committed developer than Henry. And most recently, he's been talking about the Bass Pro, and he had the tour. And for those of you who have, and for those like me who haven't, Henry's word was magnificent. Wow. So downtown's going. I've heard a presentation from Dr. Scott Morris and Todd Richardson about the new crosstown crossing that used to be the Sears Tower and that vertical village, and we're all going to be so proud. I heard Bob Loeb talk about the redevelopment of Overton Square, and we're already all so proud about that. Heard Steve Bears talk about the Bioworks and how many jobs that the Bioworks has spun off, all things that make us proud. And then, of course, I've heard these great research doctors from St. Jude talk about the miracle of almost eliminating childhood cancers right here in our hometown. We all love Le Bonheur and what they're doing, and I've learned that the doctors at Le Bonheur do many of the surgeries for the St. Jude patients. There are so many things that we have get on our knees proud for of having in Memphis. But let me share this one story with you. Last year, during the NFL playoffs, the NFC championship was between Green Bay and Seattle. You NFL fans will know the game was played in Seattle, and Seattle won and then lost the Super Bowl to New England, of course, on that last-second interception. During the third quarter of that game, they showed a shot of Green Bay, Wisconsin, from a blimp or a helicopter. And I'm here to tell you that there was not one vehicle moving on the road in Green Bay, Wisconsin. There was not one pedestrian on the street. Now, I know that Memphis is a more cosmopolitan area and a much larger area than Green Bay, but I do think that sports has the potential to have that kind of impact. So with my time here, let me just kind of reminisce with you about the sports and the development of sports, and then I hope that I'll make my point about the importance of sports along the way. I'm 67 years old. I've lived in this town all my life. For those of you who are hunters and fishermen and track stars and everything else, I'm probably not going to spend much time, because I don't have that much time, talking about the non-revenue sports that really don't draw many in attendance to their events, but they're all important to a community life. And I know that outdoor and leisure activity are incredibly important to attracting the millennials and all the like you young people who are in this audience today. But when I was growing up in Memphis, we had Rustwood Park. That was a beautiful minor league ballpark, and we did have the Memphis Chicks. And later, the thought of one day being the general manager of the Memphis Chicks, that dream came true. That ballpark burned down on Easter Sunday, 1960. My dad and I had seen an exhibition game that day, and we came home, and on the news, the ballpark, it was all wooden structure right across the street from the Baptist Hospital. It burned down. Still to this day is the largest fire in the history of Memphis. At that time, football was being played in a place called Crump Stadium, right adjacent to Central High School. It was the home of Central High School. It was also the home of the Memphis State Tigers. We had no professional football at all at that time. Golf was being played at the old Colonial Country Club, which was now the site of a Target on Spotswood, if any of you even remember that. That was our first brush with major league sports in Memphis because we had a PGA Tour event. Jack Nicklaus won at the old course there at the old Colonial. Lee Trevino won. We had some great champions. Tennis, this building had not been thought of as a racket club. If it was out of the ground by then, it was the Memphis Athletic Club. It was a swimming and exercise club, recreation club. If there would be an exhibition match in tennis, it would have been at the University Club. Pancho Gonzalez, Pancho Segura, Ken Rosewall, guys that you young people have never heard of. Aaron knows those names from reading, not knowing them, not watching them. But that's what we had. No dream of hockey, you know. So that's the sports that we had at that time. Moving forward a little bit, in 1965, that's the year that the Mid-South Coliseum and the Liberty Bowl Memorial Stadium were built. So our facilities improved, and so did our ability to attract things. The Mid-South Coliseum was the home of the Memphis State Tigers, of course. Again, we did not have a major league basketball team at that time, but we had the Memphis State Tigers, and they did really well back in those days. Dana Kirk took the Tigers to the Final Four in 1984, and things were flourishing with the Tigers. There were lots of other activities. We did have professional hockey, minor league, albeit, but we had professional hockey. The Detroit Red Wings had a team in town. The Minnesota North Stars had a team in town for a while. It may have been about 10 years after that the racket club came, and we started having professional tennis at the highest level, like Aaron is trying to recreate in this, and did such a great job with the inaugural event this year here at the racket club. Baseball, basketball, football. Baseball in 1965 was being played at Tim McCarver Stadium. Some of you may remember that the Mid-South Fairgrounds used to have 8 baseball fields out there. Now there are none. The last one to go down was when I was in high school. It was called Fairgrounds 3. Then it became Tim McCarver Stadium, and it was the home to professional baseball until we built AutoZone Park. But again, minor league baseball, okay? Also in 1965, a guy named A.F. Bud Dudley had started a bowl game in Philadelphia called the Liberty Bowl. And then when we built the Liberty Bowl Stadium, it was just called Veterans Stadium, as I remember, when it was open. Bud thrilled us all by bringing the Liberty Bowl to Memphis. And so that shortly thereafter, they renamed the stadium Liberty Bowl Memorial Stadium, and now I think Memorial has been taken off of it. But I've never been one to buy into it's your civic obligation to support sporting endeavors or much of anything. We all work hard for our money. You do what you can to support your family. But many of us who lived in Memphis in the mid-'60s and for the next 10 years really felt proud that we had something as prestigious as a well-recognized bowl game. And we would have tailgate parties, and we would have pregame parties, and we would rent buses, Henry Brenner remembers, and we would go to those games. We froze our rear end off many times, but we would go to those games. Maybe we thought in the back of our mind it was a civic obligation, but it wasn't. It was just something that we were so proud to be in the big leagues of college football, if you will. So we've got baseball, we've got AA baseball. For a while we had AAA. The New York Mets had their AAA baseball team in here, and they had some great teams. Gary Carter, who was a Hall of Fame catcher, now deceased, played here. John Milner, Mookie Wilson, lots of famous guys came through the Mets organization and played here on the mid-'60s, '70s. My joy of running the Redbirds came from '79 to '82, and we were a Montreal Expos farm club. But that's what was going on with baseball. Football, as I say, now has a new home. The Liberty Bowl was recognized throughout the country as one of the finest stadiums. They absolutely copied it in Tampa Bay, sight lines and everything. So we were proud to have that. Tennis was just now starting to take hold. Golf, the PGA Tour event, now has moved from now I'm going to move up a few years. 1972, the new Colonial Country Club out in Countrywood opened, and the professional PGA Tour event moved to the new Colonial out there. And that's, of course, where Al Geiberger shot the first 59 on the PGA Tour, and President Gerald Ford in the Pro-Am made a hole-in-one. So Memphis was starting to get some national notoriety about its sports. And I, for one, was very proud, to be a Memphian, because I did think sports was important. Was sports as important as St. Jude researchers saving children from cancer? Not in the least. But was it important to the culture of a city? I said yes. And I remember, don't want to move too far forward. Let's see, I'm trying to do this, kind of make a little bit of sense for you. Next facility improvement, as I recall, was in 1991 when we built the pyramid. I remember it was at 91 because I officiated college basketball for 17 years, and I refereed the first game in that building. Memphis State, they were still Memphis State at that time, played an exhibition game. Some of you have gone to them. You've had to waste your money when you buy your season ticket to get a few easy wins. The Victorian All-Stars. The name of this team was High Five America. All I remember is that 2 nights later they opened the real season against DePaul. Back then, the Memphis State University was getting a lot of recognition nationally for its basketball team. Still does today. Most recently, that recognition hadn't been quite so positive. But some of you may or may not recall that Memphis had been an independent, and our first league, the Metro Conference, was an incredible league. If you remember it, we had Louisville and Cincinnati, and the 2 teams that we've always considered our rivals, but also in that league at that time were Florida State University, Georgia Tech was in that league, Virginia Tech, teams that have gone on to build huge football programs, national championship football programs, and we all know and continue to see that football is the sport that's driving the bus there. And thank God we now at the University of Memphis have a coach in Justin Fuente who seems to be the one. We just hope and pray that we can keep him. So 1991, we get the pyramid. First thing a consultant from Disney told me is, that's a real mistake. You can't stuff a function into a form. You don't need to play basketball where the seats go like this in a building that goes like this. And so a lot of you may remember that Isaac Tigrett was going to put a Hard Rock Cafe down in, here's the arena, here are the seats. There's lots of space, 200,000 square feet of space down there. They never developed it. All right? We had some success in the pyramid. Memphis State did pretty well at that time, but the pyramid just never really made sense. It was the home of, it hosted many great concerts, but I'm not here to talk about the music and entertainment business. But I love it. But the pyramid it just didn't work, and I am thrilled that it's getting ready to work, and it's getting ready to work for us as Memphians in a huge way. I'm just absolutely confident it's going to be an incredible destination for lots and lots and lots of people. They're going to have to find parking for a lot of 18-wheelers coming across this country and want to stop in there, those truck drivers and lots of other people. Golf now, at some point in time, about now, a little bit later, the golf tournament, of course, stays Major League, PGA. It moves to Southwind, where we're still playing. And now we're hosting at that event. We're attracting the best of the best. We can't get Tiger Woods here, but quite honestly, he's not the best of the best anymore. He's really struggling. But Rory McIlroy was here. Dustin Johnson won the tournament a couple of years. The PGA Tour tournament here is on such solid footing, and it's sponsored by FedEx. And FedEx gives $10 million a year to the winner of the FedEx Cup, so they're not going to let anything happen. I'm keeping an eye on this watch. Okay. To this golf tournament that we're so proud of. Tennis, during these years at the Racket Club, it flourished. Billy Donovan just renovated this building. Mac Winker did a great job. The champions of this tournament, it's a who's who in great champions. Aaron will tell you. Jim Courier, I did some work with Jim Courier. I know he won this tournament. Pete Sampras, Andre Agassi, John McEnroe, you name them, they played here and they won here. Baseball is still playing at Tim McCarver Stadium at this time. Football is still going at the Liberty Bowl, and when I ramp this up to today, we're still there. Hockey, we just about lost hockey except to the Memphis River Kings down south. I will say that we did have 2 professional football teams during this time. 74, some of you remember Larry Zonka, Jim Kick, and Paul Warfield came here with the WFL. A guy from Canada named John Bassett brought a team here. League didn't work. 10 years later, Billy Donovan and Pepper Rogers brought the Memphis Showboats here. We had some great players. We had some great teams. The league didn't work. It wasn't Memphis not supporting it. It was just that the league didn't work. So let me kind of conserve some time and get to the present, and then I'll tell you a few of my ideas about what's going to happen here in sports. Presently, in baseball, the Memphis Redbirds, the AAA affiliate of the St. Louis Cardinals, play in the finest minor league facility in the United States of America. I don't say that because I was there. I tell Allison one time, it was a very frightening thing one day. I looked in the mirror and I saw the only employee of Memphis Redbirds baseball, and it was a little intimidating, but we got started, the community got behind us, and I promise you, you can tell all your friends that to this day, we opened that ballpark on April the 1st, 2000 with an exhibition game against the St. Louis Cardinals, and the ballpark still looks great. Now the St. Louis Cardinals own the team. They're doing a complete refurbishment of the ballpark, new suites, new club seats. It's going to be magnificent. New berm areas. I think it's going to be great. Football, as I said, Justin Fuente has got the Tigers on a roll, and I think that's going to continue. Basketball, isn't that a great story? I remember like it was yesterday when that NBA, I can't remember, senility at age 67, but it was like a search team or something. But it was a who's who of prominent Memphians, Gail Rose, Staley Cates, Pitt Hyde, and they said they were going to get us an NBA team. I remember when I was on the stump talking about the Memphis Redbirds, I said, if we can ever have St. Louis Cardinals AAA baseball in the finest ballpark ever built below the major league level, that's going to be the closest we're going to get to the major leagues. I didn't know NBA basketball was on the radar, and I felt like I was pretty connected. Billy Donovan and Fred Smith had tried hard to get the NFL here. It looked like that wasn't going to happen, and I'm afraid it's still not going to happen with a team 200 miles to the east and 280 miles to the north in St. Louis. But these people on this NBA search team, they were committed, and they knew that the Vancouver team was available, and thank goodness they were persuasive enough to get Mike Hasley to move the Grizzlies here. And now, all of you know, we're on SportsCenter, we're on Fox Sports Central, we're everywhere, and we're also third best record in the league, second best record in the Western Conference, and the sky's the limit for our Grizzlies. The Tigers, of course, during this time, John Calipari comes to town. Everybody's got an opinion about John Calipari, but I remember what Tiger basketball was like when a guy named Tick Price coached it. And no one came to the games, and we couldn't beat anybody. And John Calipari came in here, and the next thing I knew, my wife and I were sitting in the big arena in San Antonio watching Derrick Rose and Chris Douglas Roberts and Antonio Anderson and Robert Dozier and Joey Dorsey should have won the national championship. Mario Chalmers just didn't have to make that three-point shot that sent it into overtime. We blew a 9-point lead in the last 2 minutes. But national notoriety for the Tigers. I'm not going to talk about those wins being vacated. That's not new behavior for John Calipari. But we've got great college football. We've got NBA basketball. We've got great college basketball still. I pray Josh Pastner can right this ship. He got a great recruiting class coming in. We got a great tennis tournament that I know under Aaron's leadership is going to get going. The golf tournament continues, the FedEx Cup. Even though the participation in golf in this country is going down, this golf tournament is going to endure. We've got the canoe and kayak race downtown. Some of you may participate or go. It brings 500 contestants from all over the world here once a year to get really out in the Mississippi River in a canoe. It's amazing to me. Plus, I had the privilege of being the consultant to the Shelby Farms project and talking about open spaces. We're doubling the size of Patriot Lake. They have 2 million visitors a year. If you are an outdoors person, I know that you are a fan of Shelby Farms. It's the largest urban park in the country, and we've got it, and it's getting ready to be better. So I do think sports are important, but I don't think I've really made my point. And my point is this, at the present. Let's just say that the Grizzlies win the Western Division. and let's just say that they play the Cleveland Cavaliers, and let's say in the NBA championship, and let's say that the Cavaliers have one game better record at the end of the year, and therefore they've got home court advantage. I would submit to you that in the third quarter of the seventh game of the NBA championship between your Memphis Grizzlies and the Cleveland Cavaliers, that they could fly a blimp or a helicopter over Memphis during that game and show Memphis. Now, the streets wouldn't be bare because we're a lot bigger city than Green Bay, but if they could count the televisions tuned into that game, it would be enormous. And just the exposure that Memphis gets, again, not to make light of things, I think I've said to you that I get on my knees and thank the good Lord for St. Jude and LeBonner and all those other things that we've talked about. But there's nothing that those magnificent people and facilities can do that would have everybody in town watching or participating. Sports can do that for you. People, site selectors, Malvin can tell you, come to Memphis, they want to know what kind of major league sports do you have. That's important to people. So I think we have things to be proud of. Let me tell you just a couple of things about what I see in the future, and then I'll take my seat. I see the Grizzlies winning the championship. I hope it's this year. I mean, I'm a basketball referee. I'm a basketball referee. I'm not a basketball general manager, or, I never played the game at the highest level. But I do believe Bill Simmons is one of the most highly respected guys in the country. Bill Simmons said right before the All-Star break, not during the last 2 weeks, that he thought the Grizzlies, with the acquisition of Jeff Green, if they figure him out and put all the puzzle pieces together, could win an NBA championship. I'll come back to that. The second thing, and really the last thing, is the University of Memphis. It is so important to this community, one of the largest employers. The sports are very important. All of you who are sports fans probably know that there is a huge upheaval in college athletics, and there are getting ready to be the haves and the have-nots. We've always thought of the haves and the have-nots, but they're going to put definition to it real soon. There are 5 leagues now. They call them the Big Five, and it's the Big 12 and the Pac-12 and the Big 10 and the ACC, and I'm leaving out one. But they can make their own rules. And everybody kind of has their thoughts about what's going on in recruiting and the shady side of college athletics. These new guys can pay the players on top of the table. So my point is that the University of Memphis needs to get in one of these Big 5 leagues. And I've talked to President Rudd, and I know that he is working tirelessly to see if we can get in the Atlantic Coast Conference or the Big 12. Either would be fine with me. Can you imagine going downtown if we get in the ACC 2 times a week and playing against Louisville or North Carolina or Duke, or just every night a quality opponent, or the Big 12, same thing. It would just be great. But I'm a 2-time graduate of the University of Memphis. I love that school, but I'm really saying what's on my heart. We better get in one of those leagues, and we better do everything that we can. I see Malvin back there. He's around sports all day, every day, and he's agreeing. It's imperative that we do, and I know that we're doing all we can, and I know that the big companies are lined up behind it. When we were trying to get in the Big East, it was no secret that FedEx had given them basically a blank check to sponsor the Big East tournament in Madison Square Garden. I suspect that Fred Smith and his great group of execs over there are telling the president that they'll support this initiative again. But I do think it's important. So I'll conclude by saying, again, I'm so proud of the things that we have in Memphis. But as one who's spent a lifetime in sports, I don't back up or apologize for saying that I can't think of any field of endeavor that has the potential to bring an entire city together. And sports can do that. I don't know who the next stars are in tennis, but Aaron is going to find them, and she's going to bring them here, and I hope that the roof blows off this place. If the Tigers can right the ship and win an NCAA championship or get to the finals, same thing I said about the Grizzlies and the Packers. I think there'd be a huge majority of people tuned into their television watching Memphis on national TV. The Memphis banner is flying all over, folks, and it's important. So Jana, I appreciate your persistence in asking me to come. I hope that I have not bored all of y'all with my sharing about my love of sports, but I try to make my point that it's more than just the cartoon of life and the comic page of life. It's very, very important. And if we get in one of these leagues, the University of Memphis, and if Oklahoma's coming in this Saturday and Texas is coming in next Saturday and Oklahoma State's coming in the next week, Texas A&M's in the Southeastern Conference now. That's the league I left out. How could I leave out the SEC? It's going to be amazing. And the same thing, national champions like Florida State and Miami, they play in that other league that we're trying to get in. So it's going to be important. You as Memphians should just need to know the importance of that to the overall benefit and future of our community. So I'm happy to have had the opportunity to share these thoughts with you, and I appreciate you inviting me.